Welcome, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here with starting a new series, yes, of Hearts of Iron 4 BlackICE, and this time we are, of course, going to be playing as Britain, Great Britain, Churchill. I'm a big fan of Churchill. Wasn't a perfect man, nobody is, but so we're going to continue that. Just a quick note, we are going to be continuing the Kaiserreich series, but we're going to do a few of these here, as I really want to play the real war, World War II, though. The fantasy Kaiserreich War is cool and all, but we're going to do this as well. So, we have Britain here. Stanley Baldwin is currently the Prime Minister. British Stoicism and war to end all wars traits, but we currently have King George V is currently the reigning monarch. So we need to select a national focus. We have two options currently. I've sort of went through and done a lot of adding micro work to a bunch of productions, so sort of got that out of the way. So we have rearmament program, 2 civilian factories, or total of 4. And we have reinforced the empire. Base national unity is good. As you may have all heard, national unity is going bye-bye with the next expansion. Those of you who don't know, national unity was in essence created, I believe it was in Hearts of Iron 3, to make France surrender at the right moment. That was the whole function of it. Obviously used in other elements of the game, but don't mourn its going away, because we now are going to have 2 metrics. One, war support, and the other is stability. So stability, national unity, it's how stable your government, your society is. That's sort of national unity. War support is how much support there is for the war. I mean, obviously it's sort of in its title. An example of at least I would say, we'll see how the developers see about it, high national stability, if you will, and a low war support nation would be, at least at start, would be the United States. There was no support in the United States for going to what would be, if thought of, a major war. A banana war, which actually had gone on in Latin America or something. Well, that's just a few Marines sent off to help with things, but not a big national war. No support whatsoever for that. But there was no real chance for a communist revolution or a fascist takeover or any other major change. Maybe there's, bitterness between Democrats and Republicans, which, there's disagreements philosophically there, but they're not great. But none of them wanted, on either side, wanted to overthrow the system to make sure that their side won. So very strong stability, no war support. That obviously changed on December 7th when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. Massive war support, where we can see, let's see, I'm trying to think of a nation, sort of the opposite. Japan, I would say, to fairly large extent. There was relatively high war support, but there was very bad national stability, I would say, in Japan, because I think it was in 1935 you had the prime minister assassinated, and there were coups and all kinds of stuff going like that. Might not be the most unstable country. So, you can look at that and see things, and how that. So we're going to go with rearmament program, because I want the civil factory. So let's get going. Might as well Pick up the speed. Japan claims hegemony in East Asia. Alright. Heavy aircraft level 1, light level 1, armor level 1, no subyards, level 12 shipyards, artillery level 1, no truck factories, small arm factory level 3, no ammo factories, no uniforms, Navy size huge, Air Force size small, Army size average, green command, okay, reasonably well spells out Britain at the time. Now, we will have a competing build program between these factories and these, or maybe more, military factories. Right now, I do love all of the great different things to produce in BlackICE. I have definitely concentrated some production here and some of the support elements to get them up and producing early, get a reserve of them, if you will, but we will be needing to produce a lot of different types of things, not just trucks. We'll need light utility vehicles, artillery trucks, standard infantry type carrying trucks. Preparations for the Winter Olympics, great. And this is, of course, what happened historically. His Majesty King George V, King of the United Kingdom and the British Dominions and Emperor of India, has passed away. His quiet calm and devotion to his subjects saw the empire through both the Great War and the Great Depression. His son will assume the mantle as King Edward VIII, but there are already concerns that he will be too independent of thought. I would disagree that the term is independent of thought. Stanley Baldwin and Neville Chamberlain are preparing to ensure that he will accept direction from Westminster and the cabinet. Okay, that is very loaded statements. I don't know that Edward, and again, there's people that are more expert on this, and I'm not an Edwardian expert, especially Edward VIII. Read a bit, watched some documentaries. I don't think that he had any sort of like dictatorial or plans, and I don't think he was too independent of thought. It's just some of his friends and acquaintances were undesirable people, and he was also very careless with his state papers around these people that the government, including the intelligence services, not just prime ministers and other ministers of the government, thought were undesirable, but the intelligence services thought they were, enemies of the state, if you will. Okay, the K6 red telephone box. Okay, I know, because I do get some of the stats, a lot of you are younger. That is not a red TARDIS. Okay, I know you all know what a TARDIS is. That is not. People in the olden days used to have telephones that were connected via wires, and since you didn't have a long enough wire to lead out of your house as you walked around or drove around a city, and people would trip over the wires, they had to install telephones in locations all over the city. And so Britain did, designed by Sir Giles Gilbert Scott in 1935 to coincide with the Jubilee of King George V. Sadly, the King did not live to see any such examples installed. Initially known as the Jubilee kiosk, some 70,000 examples were installed around the United Kingdom between 1936 and 1968. So these were fairly early example of a rather nice telephone box set up around Britain. Yes, I'm being a bit flippant. I know you know what they are, but someone I follow on Twitter, she posts tweets about historical women and women's achievements in history, and I'm just interested in history, wherever it comes from, and I can tell she's young who does this. I don't know her other than just following her on Twitter. Gone back and forth with her a little bit, but she, is the sort of the youth, yes, the Winter Olympic Games, the youth often thinks they know everything because they've gone through school and were taught things and now know so much, and how all know so much and are out there striving for the benefit of women in society, in her case, but other things. Well, she posts about this woman that she found that had a remarkable history, and her name was Mata Hari, and she had a picture and a link to an article that she sort of wrote up a little quickly from like Wikipedia or something. And how could it be that the story of this woman, that how they never made a movie about Mata Hari? And I tweeted back, they did. And I forget what, I had to look it up. One starring Greta Garbo in like 1933, and sometime in the 80s, one by Sylvia Crystal, of Emanuela fame. But there was also, I know, a silent movie before that, and there's been probably 10... Oh, oops, she goes. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there to know that the youth just thinks they know a lot, but don't. Of course, I was that way when I was young, too. And now that I'm old, I know I don't know everything. So, yes. Okay, national unity change. Our nation's mood is changing for the better or for the worst. Okay, political power down. Remove homogeneous nation to varied nation, which grants political power. Okay. And so that would be, obviously, we were talking earlier, instead of a change to how much Britain would or wouldn't support a war, but to its national consensus. So, stability. Communists outside the Soviet Union are fixated on attempts that have been made to destroy the Soviet Revolution. Harry Pollitt, General Secretary of Britain's Communist Party, says that the trials in Moscow represent a new triumph in the history of progress. I guess that means the show trials in which they had trumped up evidence against people and killed them because, hey, we want to keep Stalin in power. Please, people, understand, communists are evil. And you go, but they want to help mankind. Their goal is to help mankind be better. Well, isn't that what the Nazis wanted too? Dance show. That isn't the dance show. I can go on about that, but I won't. That's what the Nazis wanted to do. They wanted to help mankind too. They're just willing to kill millions of people to help mankind. So are the communists. They're willing to kill even more millions of people to help mankind. Whenever you get an ideology that wants to change things and is willing to kill millions to change things, that's generally what I would call evil. And you go, oh, well, they're just fighting the retrograde or the reactionaries who are trying to stop communism. Look at the show trials. Those people weren't capitalist saboteurs that were killed. Those were just people who Stalin was afraid of, not even enemies of Stalin. So that is what shows them to be evil, not just simply they're fighting their opponents. Okay. Remilitarization of the Rhineland. Several German divisions recently advanced into the Rhineland, making the first time since the end of the Great War that Germany has forces positioned west of the Rhine. This is a clear violation of the Treaty of Versailles, under which Germany is forbidden from militarizing the region. The French seem content to limit their response to this breach to diplomatic objections, and public opinions in Britain is firmly against war. Okay. Those are French soldiers there. Yeah, and so this is remilitarization. What they're talking about with war support. France and Britain and Germany and Austria-Hungary and Italy and Russia were all just massively traumatized by the war. Okay, we've got more factories. Before I started this, I did a bunch of this just to sort of stack up, and I probably should have done that a little quicker because we're burning through. Oh, no. We're going to leave that, cancel that. Just so that we get through these faster. Instead of slowly build one after another. Unfortunately, it did sort of sprinkle that over. I didn't think it would happen that fast. Rearmament program. Now, I've just called maybe some of you people supporters of evil, because I know a few of you are leftists, and no, I don't just want people who agree with me to watch this, and I'm not even necessarily trying to get you to think like me that those naval dockyards are, because home defense I don't need right now. Air armament, the air bases. Now some of these other down here, coastal forts and whatever, are useful, but I don't need those right today. I'll need them before the war maybe, so we'll go naval rearmament. But that's, like I say, coming out my conservative nature. And now conservative don't necessarily think that I, and those of you who have been around a long time know that I don't necessarily dogmatically hold one sort of, I didn't mean to have that stopped. Closing ceremonies, Winter Olympics, fine. With a particular ideology through and through. But I'm conservative definitely in the nature of change. Not that I don't want change, but I want change how do I put this? I don't want change for change's sake. I want change that we know will be an improvement and have do the least damage. Let's organize it. So that doesn't mean that reforms either in government or other things aren't industrial planner. Okay, captain of industry, sorry, 10-5, infrastructure. John Anderson of the Anderson shelters. If you've heard of those, it was a type of bomb shelter that was meant to go in your like in your home. So there was a Morris or different shelter type that was meant to go in your backyard. I forget which is which. We go with that probably, and it was named after a different minister that may be showing it. So you know, like I say, change when it's determined to be good is good. Now we'll probably disagree on what is good, but maybe effective change that is a positive effect. Okay. Let's build a couple of more. And because I do want to also continue to increase things. In Britain's House of Commons, he speaks of danger to, Churchill's upset, obviously, the title, to parliamentary nations from heavily armed dictatorship. He complains that the spirit of the British people is being tamed and cowed with peace films, anti-recruiting propaganda, and resistance to defense measures. However, much of the British political establishment does not share Mr. Chamberlain's opinion of the Germans or Herr Hitler's intentions. As such, he is denounced as a warmonger with anti-German obsession. Now, two things, and I know I've talked about this before, but not everyone is a re-watcher of my series. And this is something that we've seen, I would say, twice in the West, and I'm putting that specifically there. This idea that war is caused by either armies or generals who want to be famous in battle, being victorious generals, so they want to trigger wars, caused by armies, or caused by having weapons and munition companies ideas, so that if we all just disarmed, if everybody just disarmed, it would be more peaceful. Now the first instance that I know of this that's of any widespread and significance is post-World War I. And as I talked of the trauma of World War I, it was traumatic, particularly for Europe. And so the pacifist movement started. Yes, there's pacifists before this, but I'm talking sort of a widespread sort of movement. Now, I can understand and agree with, in cases, the idea of being against being involved in a particular war. I get that, okay? That is different than all war is bad. Now you're saying war is good, you want war? No. What I'm saying is being prepared for war and being willing to fight a war is good, and you can't always avoid war, because war is not something that, unless you're willing to just to surrender to anybody who's willing to attack you, and then once you've surrendered to one dictator, say, oh, well, we want peace with Hitler, we'll give in to Hitler because as they sort of thought in a lot of these movies that were made during the time, that bombing campaigns were just going to obliterate cities. Well, they sort of kind of did, but I mean, like, kill everybody. This is just going to be so terrible. And war is now just so terrible that living peacefully under anybody's conditions is better than everyone dying in. And they also, of course, in a lot of these movies, which didn't happen in World War II, thought that there were going to be lots of aerial gas attacks going on. So that was also another horror that was avoided on the battlefield, though of course there were gas attacks on Jews in gas factories of death. But it was avoided on the field. So, this is so much worse than being under Hitler. So or somebody like Hitler. So we should just give in and never have a war. The problem with that is you also got Stalin out there. And so you give in to Hitler or somebody like Hitler, but he's going to fight Stalin. So you're still in a war either way. You decide, oh, we're just going to be peaceful pacifists, and, and you go, oh, okay, well, you're not going to participate in Mr. Hitler's war. Okay, yeah. Remember I was talking about those gas factories that kill people? They'll just start lining up the pacifists. Hitler would have started lining up the pacifists and sending them into the gas factories. And, well, are you ready to go to war yet for me, or yet? How many are we going to kill? You know, that kind of thing. Or Stalin doing a similar sort of thing. He didn't use gas factories. He used mass famine, in which during the Soviet Union's time, before World War II, before Germany was doing anything, and which was covered up by the American media, at least some of it that went to I forget who, one of the Pulitzer Prize winners, that later admitted that he covered up the Stalinist famines, in which there were fields full of food, in which he put soldiers around to guard them and literally shoot people who tried to get food, because in the Ukraine, and this was in the Ukraine, and you go talk to Ukrainians today, how many people died? They're very many, tens of thousands, more than that. Because he wanted that food to go to Moscow and other places, so he used famine to depopulate parts of the region. So again, evil people. But so the idea, and then the second time in history that we've known of a blanket peace movement, because the alternative was better than death. The Soviet Union was better than death. It was nuclear war. Now that we have nukes, we just can't possibly have war. So we must always be pacifists. Well, I disagree with that either. Again, I don't want to start throwing nuclear bombs around. I'm not advocating that. But I'm also advocating countries like America, Britain, France have nuclear weapons that would keep, if you're going to use them against us, we're going to use them against you, kind of thing. So you have that issue. And then two, and so that's just a general blanket. And, they try to, see in Vietnam, I talked about, sometimes you can argue against being involved in a particular war. I get that. But the fear of being drafted and the idea that your loved ones are being drafted to sent into the Vietnam War was used by the American enemies as an indirect approach to combating America in Vietnam. So even though you may have legitimate reason to protest that the war isn't being handled well, or you just don't think American adventurism is being good by going in there, I get that point. But you're also helping the enemy out, and it was a tactic used by the enemy. Now the other is, and I know we're spending time on this, but again, really big fan of Churchill. So Churchill understood that, but he also understood that Hitler was a great danger. He could have been wrong about that, in the sense that a lot of people today, as I'm making this, think Trump is a big danger. They think not just that he says a lot of stupid things, we're going to pull NBC's license to broadcast. NBC doesn't have a license to broadcast. All of its affiliate stations all over the U.S. have a license to broadcast. You would have to pull each and every one of them. The network itself just provides the news that is then shown on all the local networks, or on cable or satellite television, which you don't need a license for. So Trump just doesn't know what he's talking about a lot. So yeah, Trump, is a bit of a buffoon in that way. He doesn't know what he's talking about often. But a lot of people believe that Trump is going to just start nuking places, or do stupid things that's going to start a nuclear war. They may be right. We don't know what Trump is going to do. I don't think he is going to do that. I am not, as you may know, if you've watched for a while, a big Trump fan. I like some of the stuff that the government is doing under Trump, but I am not a big Trump fan. And when I made a sort of statement by that, and somebody said, in writing, well, I'm out of here then. I couldn't tell whether they were out of unsubscribing and leaving the channel because I like some of what Trump's doing, or that they were leaving because I wasn't a big supporter of Trump. I didn't quite get what they were displeased by. So, says a lot of stupid things, but not everything's going bad. But we don't know what Trump will be. Of course, we do know that Hitler was a very great danger, and Churchill was right about that, but he might theoretically have been wrong. He wasn't, of course. Okay, early sonar. Yeah, I also went through and sort of looked at the text. We've got early sonar, 94 days. We could do grand battle plan. Ooh, 3. Well, we are a naval nation. Yeah, let's do this. Now, while we're racing forward, a few people, now there's only a few people either way or a few people here, but a few people have complained about, and especially the start of the Kaiser Reich series was done live, so I was chatting with people and that really sort of distracted me. Complained about that I talk maybe a little too much or pause the game too much, and I will absolutely agree that there is a balance, and sometimes I do know that I do it too much. But on the other hand, is that there's really good game players out there, and there's really sort of really good, commentators that are funny, that are interesting, just on, and they could be playing any game at all. Doesn't matter what they're playing, whether it's historical or playing World of Warcraft or whatever, and they're just fun to watch play. Well, that is sort of what I'm competing against, and so what I'm trying to do is be a bit different, to give historical commentary, to give opinions. Again, sometimes my opinions are strong, but I'm not trying to get you all to agree with me. I'm trying to get you to, I will say, I'm trying to get you to examine what you think and why you think it. Not that then, oh, well, maybe I'm wrong about X, that you would then necessarily agree with me. There's other opinions and positions. Like I'm talking now because we're just letting the clock go forward because there's not much going on. So you, just because you may re-examine some of what you think and why you think it, yes, I guess, reinforcing empire now, doesn't mean that then you're jumping over to what I think is right. It just means you're thinking about it. And that is a goal of mine. I will clearly admit that. And like I say, you may think, oh, well, of course he's trying to get people to agree with him. Well, I don't even necessarily agree with me, and especially if I were to think maybe a few years ago, or, ideas of mine shift over time as I think about different conditions and situations in the world. I sort of change my mind over time as to what I think is best. Generally, like I say, I'm on the conservative side in that I don't want radical change. And that includes social change, radical social change right off the bat. But then again, I am not what normally people would go Christian conservative, but that isn't what this, so I'm not like trying to, I'm not that kind of a conservative, more of a traditionalist conservative, which, Christianity is part of it, most assuredly, but I'm not trying to get people to behave just the way the church wants you to behave, or some sort of vision that way. I'm talking more conservative as in, we don't need to change radically, very rapidly at any time. And society changes over time, and that's one of the things I study. I study the way the society changes, and especially what sort of fascinates me is, if you will, the age of Enlightenment. I know I don't talk about much, but coming out of the age of religion and wars that were fundamentally religious in nature, say the 30 Years' War in Germany, we'll call it that. Changing from that into the 18th century, and then into the rise of the 19th century and, if you will, the supremacy of the middle class, and that middle class values become a thing, and still to this day are sort of the thing, where before the 19th century there was, because there's always, you can always define a middle, and so there was that, and they did sort of have values distinct to their viewpoints, their sort of station. But the predominant values were either the elite's values or the common values, which were different from each other, and sort of rode along together as in two different worlds. And now we have both of those largely societal viewpoints that are being suppressed by middle classism, and that middle classism is the thing to strive for. Elites want to see themselves still as just middle class, maybe with money, but we're just still middle class. Poor people want to see themselves, no, we're not poor, we're not the common people, we're really middle class. And so different societal viewpoints on things, and that's some of the stuff I really do study. We don't talk about it much in my Let's Plays because mostly we're talking about World War II and great big conflicts, but that is also something that is going on. Okay. Political advisors. George Bernard Shaw. Acclaimed speechwriter. Oh God, he was another evil, evil man. Apolitical. Oh God. BlackICE, wake up, smell the coffee. George Bernard Shaw was not apolitical. Oh God, he was a Fabian socialist. Go onto YouTube, and may even link it below, of him talking about wanting to mass kill people. He was serious. It was no joke. He wanted everybody every year to show up before a panel and justify their existence. Okay? Do you produce, sir or madam, more than you consume in society? And if you do not produce more than you consume in society, we will send you to the death chamber. That is what George Bernard Shaw believed, promoted, advocated, was on film advocating in a sort of speech-like interview thing. Oh man, he was evil, evil, evil. He was, in my opinion, it wasn't based on race to the best of my knowledge. I don't know, quite honestly, I don't know his views on race at all, if he saw things in racial terms. But he very much was as evil as Hitler. And it wasn't because he's a socialist, okay? Because you may think, oh, now Gamer is saying socialists are just as evil. No, this is not because he was a socialist, or a Fabian socialist, which, if you know anything about Fabianism, Fabianism is in and of itself is sort of a destructive viewpoint, but also their symbol is a wolf in sheep's clothing. And it still very much is, meaning that they are the wolf that wants to eat its society, but they appear simply to be sheep. No, that is not why I think he's evil, evil, evil. He is evil because he advocated for mass death to useless people as he saw it. And I think he would mean both the elites in society as well as the poor people in society who were, living off of, living off of society, welfare or whatever. And so that to me, that you would advocate, in essence, death camps, is just an evil philosophy. I know he's also a famous playwright and whatever, but man, anything that he wrote has his viewpoint on it. And so, again, I'm not condemning him. I mean, I disagree with socialism, yes, but I'm not condemning him so highly because he is a socialist. I'm condemning him because of his support for, death camps and death panels. And not just, could be because, well, you're too old, so you're going to die. You're not producing enough. God, he's an evil, evil man. Okay. Political advisors. Well, Philip Kerr. Again, those are just generic pictures mostly. Is this also yeah, both those are political advisors. Yeah, we can't move out of early mobilization until 15%. Okay, so Harold Alexander, Land Doctrine Research Time. Let's reduce our industrial research time. How are we doing on our wants? Okay. Well, at least on most of these, okay, these two, medium artillery, we need to, and coastal, but medium artillery particularly. I'm looking at the red, yes, but I'm mostly looking here at the green to see, or is it green or is it yellow, to see if we are even producing some of the stuff. Okay, which we're not in some of the cases. Okay, good. So, see, I have not oil, which we probably should be producing, or importing some more. But I do want to do this research efficiency gain. I think that is important. Now, again, as I talked about, let's do some of these, because these will, for where we do have production lines going, they will produce more efficiently and quicker. Okay, oil. Let's see here. Who do we want to? British. Okay, no. Okay, see here it's 10 for one factor because they're a puppet, I think, or integrate puppet, I'm not sure exactly. So we'll get a little better deal from them. Don't mind a little bit of deficit. Part of the reason I think that this, well, I wanted to come here, has jumped up is, oh, I keep clicking, is with some of these that we may be producing, like this one, uses a lot more oil than we did at start. So what we're going to do here is, okay, the Spanish Civil War has started. Yes. Okay, we want to move you. No, you up. Oh, am I hitting the wrong thing here? No. Guess no, these are all. going to be about the same production. Well, never mind then. But what we will do, I guess, is I want to make sure that any of our light vehicles or aircraft that need fuel tanks are being fully produced. Move these to the bottom. And the carrier. So yeah, so these are, that just doesn't require oil, but I just want to make sure, like, the aircraft and whatnot all had their oil that they needed. And it'd be like the Ark Oil or a few of the others here that won't have it. Oh, what happened to, oh, the submarine went away, so again we need more oil. Reinforce the Empire. Well, now that we actually need a bigger bunch, because I'm just sort of loath to put a whole factory for just 2 or 3 oil. Okay, 10 for 1, that's a good deal as well. Better than 28. Turkish Straits questions the zone around the Straits of Bosphorus and Dardanelles have been demilitarized by the Lausanne Treaty, yet it is an important region and may fall into the wrong hands in its current state. It is better to let the Turks have full sovereignty there. Okay, so meaning that they could theoretically rearm, you know, the or, you know, place naval guns or other things that would keep others from just either moving through or grabbing it up fast. We'll do that because I want to get down here to help here, like develop Canada and Australia and others. So okay, infantry tank artillery coordination. We got, that was one of the World War I techs. I like these. I really like these. I think they've done a good job with these. I think these are marvelous. Now, this is one thing that I have a mild problem with the, or maybe a major problem really, but with the developers of Hearts of Iron, is that they would see this as completely unnecessary. Because look, most all of these, and I would agree most all of these, the majors of World War I don't need to research because hey, they already got all this stuff. This is sort of what we're starting with in 36. Yes, and they're right. In most cases now, I think I am going to research this because this doesn't take too long. And we got a 20% bonus here. And they use the Star Wars Stormtrooper, but is that this is something that widespread was really only sort of done, I would say, by the Germans in World War II, and anybody else sort of needed to study it. But so a lot of the stuff, most of the, we're going to do a few more of these because I want to open up a few more armaments factories. I still don't want to open up a few more. Trained Army Commands, good. But this is what makes, shall we say, Britain different than Afghanistan. Afghanistan didn't have all of, doesn't, you know, even to this day, doesn't have all these World War I techs. And not just did they have a manual and did somebody read it and figure this stuff out, are these techs known and trained and or not just texts but doctrines known and trained and spread throughout the armed forces, not just as a few generals, or someone was showing in or was talking about an example of where in World War one of these tactics, maybe the stormtrooper one that the Russians had did. Yeah, and I can look at some of the stuff. There was some definite trench raiding and stuff going on that was sort of stormtrooper-ish by the different nations, but was it widespread technique that most all officers, NCOs, understood and could practice? No, it was limited to just a few, and mostly to Germany. But then you got nations like the Latin American nations. They did not have the experience in World War I, so that they're not going to have all of these, or most all these texts, again, widely spread throughout their armed forces, understood and well coordinated. Time on target. Oh, this is, they're calling it creeping barrage. Okay. I thought that was time on target. Blocked barrage and rolling barrage. Did your average or any Latin American nation know how to perform a creeping barrage? I would say clearly not. No, they didn't. Might some of them know some of these other techniques? Sure, maybe. And so this is what makes Germany, Britain, France different than, and this is something that always gets me in trouble whenever I criticize China. I could go into it, but I get more red X's on Hearts of Iron Form over China than anything else. Even though I'm a big fan of wanting to improve China and Manchukuo and other things immersively. But China did not have these techniques down. Yes, it was a major battlefield in World War II, and some of you will probably maybe disagree with me, but it was a major battlefield, but it was not a major power. But it was also not a modern power that knew all of this stuff. And but there were a few Chinese officers that did know this stuff. I could go into that sometime. But it wasn't widespread knowledge that was able to effectively be done in, say, a nation like China, where much better understood in, say, Japan. So that is sort of the big difference. And this is what the sort of fundamental background to these keep the lesser nations as a war-fighting technology from being equal to the great powers. Well, let's get through this month, and then I think we'll end the episode. Oh, we need to, again, we want to produce something that we're not producing. Recon equipment. Let's produce recon equipment. Plan. Okay. Infantry reconnaissance. Okay, so we want to do that. And mechanical computing. Let's do HQ radios. Battlefleet concentration. Okay, well, I'm going to end the episode here, and I want to thank you all for watching. Of course, I want to thank you for liking the videos, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. I really do appreciate that. And even more than all of that, I really want you to post below your questions, comments, suggestions, ideas, corrections if I'm wrong about something. I really do want to correct the record, because quite honestly, I'm just speaking as I'm playing here and don't have any good notes down. So please post. I really do appreciate that. So thanks so much. See you next time for more Hearts of Iron.